So,
woo! That's what I like. That's what I like.
First Samuel chapter 25. Before we get into chapter 25, though, let's do a quick recap like I like to do. We go all the way back to the beginning of Samuel. Remember, we have Elkanah and Hannah, and they're worshiping God, and they're like, no, we can't have a baby. And he's got another wife, and she's having babies like crazy, but he loves the one who's not having the wife. And she says, Lord, please, let me have a baby. And so then he says, okay, great, you can have this baby. So she has the baby and names him Samuel, which means I'm going to dedicate this one to the Lord. And so then we have Samuel. So now we're in the book of 1 Samuel. This is the story of him and his role as the kind of high priest prophet for the nation of Israel. This is after the judges situation. Remember, they went to Exodus and God was leading them. Moses was their leader, but God was leading literally with smoke and fire through the desert. And then they take over the land. And God is still leading them, but they have a prophet kind of giving them spiritual guidance, and then they just kind of have their tribes. They're kind of just doing their own thing. And then they say, well, we want to have these judges that rule over us. And sometimes they didn't ask for it. Sometimes God gave them over to these judges to rule. And honestly, most of the judges that ruled were actually pretty terrible people. I mean, they're like, take Bradford times negative -1 million. Wow. They're kind of really bad. So we actually see then that these...
Easy target.
Easy. It's a wing and a miss. So we love Bradford. And so we see these terrible judges, and then they're like, okay, fine. Don't give me this terrible judge. Give us a king. And Samuel here is like, you have a king. His name is God himself. And why do you want this king? Well, I know, yeah, we got a king, but like, give me a guy that we can like venerate and worship and support and lift up. And Samuel's like, no, you've got God. He's right here. I'm literally talking to the guy, I'm talking to God right here. And they're like, no, give us a God. And so he gets upset. And then God's like, no, they're not upset with you, Samuel. They're upset with me. So let's give them what they want. And then they figure out this guy's bad. Bad news, okay? So we're going through, we've gone ups and downs, all these trials. Saul is now chasing David. We already know David has already been anointed on his head. He's going to be the next king. And just at the end of chapter 24 here, it says, in chapter 24, verse 20, it says, now listen, I know, this is Saul talking, I know that you will surely be king and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand. So he already acknowledges it right there. You're going to be the one. You're the one, David. And verse 21, he says, therefore, make a covenant with me. Swear to me now by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants, that you won't end my lineage. Just because I'm messed up, that you won't end my lineage. So let's see what happens here. So we're in chapter 25 now, starting right out of the gate. Now Samuel died. Right out. There's no like preface. It's just boom, he's dead. Right out of the gate. All right, so what do we do now? The guy who's supposed to be the representative between God and these people, he's now dead. So we've already got a wicked king, people who are kind of iffy. We've talked about they're worshiping other idols and stuff. We've already got an iffy people. They have a terrible leader, and now they don't have a spiritual person being the voice of reason. So let's see what's going to happen here. And all the children of Israel gathered together and mourned him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah. And then David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. So real quick here, I'll pull out this. If you're not familiar, you just go to the website, bradflight.com/1-Samuel or 1-Samuel. All these videos get posted there as well. And they're also on YouTube. If you're watching with us, you're probably watching from one of those places. So you're literally saying, Brad, I've already done that. That's how I got here. So, good for you. Thank you for joining. So we have, if you'll remember my handy dandy map, what's that?
It's a line. Mediterranean.
That's the Mediterranean, right? And we got this, and then what is this up here?
Galilee.
Sea of Galilee, and then we got this here.
Red Sea.
And rhymes with Red Sea.
Dead Sea.
Dead Sea, right? So we got the Dead Sea here. We've got Galilee up here. We got the Mediterranean Sea here, right?
Red's down bottom, right?
The Red Sea does come up down in there, somewhere around in there. And then another lobe of it comes up around in here, and then you've got no, Nile. Euphrates is over there. All right? This is perfect. This is perfect cartography. I mean, this is to scale. You could literally take this and go marching in the desert. You'll find where you're going. All right. So what we see is it says that there is the historical. I mentioned this last week. The historical boundary of the nation of Egypt is what they call the Egyptian River. It's not the Nile. It's the Egyptian River, and it's kind of a dry riverbed that is kind of only during heavy rains will it flow, and it's right about there. It's very close to what we see as the modern line between Israel and Egypt today. The modern boundary is right about here, like this, and it actually goes down. Again, it's not to scale, no, whatever. But this is Jordan over here in modern day Jordan, okay? And then the boundary here, this is Israel, and it goes all the way down, and it actually connects. This lobe is, I made a mistake, my bad. The lobe of that Red Sea, the Sea of Aqaba, is over here, and so that's the bottom. This, by the way, is the wilderness of Paran. Okay, now this is Bethlehem. I'm sorry. Well, I'm way off. It's not past the Red Sea. So Bethlehem's right here. Jerusalem's right here. Okay. And so then we know that as it comes up, it kind of does that. And then we've got kind of a big mountain right here. This is Mount Carmel up here. It kind of juts out and kind of overlooks it's kind of a pretty place. Okay. So now that you kind of see where we are, let's get back into the scripture. So at the end of verse 1, David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. Now remember, Ramah, Bethel, Shiloh, all of that's right here in the middle. So they're here. He goes to the funeral, and then where does he go? He got on his helicopter, and they paralifted, out. No, that's a hike. He walked. Okay.
How many miles is that?
This is probably close to 70 miles from here to here. Which you got to remember. I mean, Jesus.
Like here to Galveston?
Yeah, like here to Galveston. But in the scheme of things, I mean, Israel is tiny, right? We think about it in terms of Texas. We talked about the fact that Connecticut is basically the same size as the greater Houston area. There's a state like basically the size of Harris County, right? So it's hard for us to remember that like there could be something in the Harris County that's its own state or its own country. And that's kind of what you're dealing with Israel. That's what you're kind of dealing with, right? So he traveled all the way to the other end of it. I mean, it's really about 70 miles. Go from here to College Station, kind of a situation, okay? So let's go to verse 2. Now there was a man in Maon whose work was in Carmel. Maon is up here in this area here, and his work, his job, so he commuted, 10 or 20 miles to Carmel. Okay, we commute 10 to 20 miles easily today. That was a little bit harder back then. You had to walk that, but not uncommon. So we see that he's got a home in Maon, and his job is in Carmel. He was a rich man with 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. So 3,000 sheep, to put that in perspective, a rich person would be, if you had somewhere around 100 or so, you'd be considered a rich person. So he's got 3,000. And the reason I say about 100, because listen, if I have 99 and I lose the one, what does that make me? I'm not a rich man anymore. I've lost the one. So I'll leave the 99 that are safe. I go find that one because I see value in that thing. So Jesus uses that example, that parable, right? Isn't that amazing? So he's got 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. So 4,000 animals. If you can imagine a sheep or a goat being one of these chairs, right? You can imagine 4,000 of those things. It would more than fill up this room. We'd be spilling out into the pasture outside, right? So, or not pasture, but into the yard outside. And so you have to imagine if you had 4,000 chairs. I mean, where are you going to put them? And on top of that, they're eating everything that they see along the way. You ever seen goats? They eat everything, man. I watched on YouTube recently. There was somebody who was like, as a lady, she lived in New Mexico, I think. So she's kind of weird, from New Mexico, but
Yeah, but they're proving the aliens are truly there.
the aliens are there, yes, and they're coming to Texas, obviously. So yeah, yeah, yeah. He's I got to get back out of there. But she had a bunch of brush, and that someone wanted to charge her. I don't know, something like $5,000 to clear brush her property, and so this guy comes in there and he says, "I will charge you like $500, but I'm bringing my herd of goats. I can feed them." And it'll clear your brush. In like 12 hours, it was clear. Right. Like this video. The goats are just, they eat everything. If they can reach it, they eat it. So she was like, this is a special plant to me or whatever. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to put a fence around that. Other than that, whatever's not fenced off, they're going to eat everything here. And when it's done, it was clear. It looked like a machine had done it. It was awesome. Really cool. So you got 4,000 of those suckers eating. You've got to have some property to manage that, right? So that means he's not just a lot of sheep and goats. He's also got to have some land, whether he owns it or he's renting it, leasing it, in order to have his livestock on there, which takes money, okay? So Mount Carmel is going to be closer to the ocean. And why is that important? It's going to have more rain. And if it has more rain, it has more grass. If it has more grass, I can feed my sheep. So he's doing this on purpose. He's not just saying I want to go 10 or 20 miles away from home. That was not everyone did that. It wasn't uncommon, but not everyone did that. A lot of people worked in their own house, making their own stuff, right? But for him to choose to do that, he chose that on purpose for a reason. And it's because of the climate from the ocean and the elevation. It pulled the moisture out and gave him good grass on that mountainside. So, verse 3, the man's name was Nabal. That's how you pronounce it. Nabal, Nabal, which is kind of fun to say. And that name actually has a meaning. It actually means fool or foolish. So that's interesting. It's like we would say, instead we would say Bradford. You know, it's like,
I was literally about to say the same thing.
We love you, man.
You're leaving yourself wide open, Bradford.
No, Bradford's awesome. Bradford has grown in his relationship with Christ and his knowledge in the Bible like crazy in the years. He's in seminary. He's awesome. So
I'm better than their I'm better than whatever it is they're saying.
he's okay to take a joke, right? Yeah. So the man's name was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding. In the original Hebrew there, when you read that, it's not just good understanding, but she was witty and smart. Okay? Not just good understanding, but like she was on it. Okay? Good understanding and beautiful. The word for that is beautiful. So she was beautiful. Like there's no like the eye of the beholder thing where it's like maybe that's good for you, not for me, or whatever. Like she was universally beautiful. Okay? But the man was harsh and evil in his actions, and he was a Calebite. So one of the things I have in my notes here is it says when he was harsh, it says here, and I'm using the modern English version. You use whatever version you've got, okay?
I do EBV when I come to the Monday night with Brad.
You switch it over? Yeah. So it says here that when it says harsh and evil, that he treated her poorly as if she was like a slave. Not a wife, but like slave in treatment. And it says that he is a Calebite there. Now, that is up for discussion, and I bring these things up to you. There is some commentary back and forth in the manuscripts on where it says Calebite here. In my Bible, they have Calebite capitalized.
Yeah.
Is yours capitalized?
Yeah, mine's capitalized.
Okay. They are now thinking that perhaps it shouldn't have been capitalized because the root word for Caleb actually is the same as canine. And what they're saying is he, so work back with me here. So he was harsh and evil in his action, and he was a Calebite. It's really more like saying he treated her terribly like a mutt. Like a jerk, right? So that's that. He was a jerk, yeah. So that's really more of the translation, not that he was connected to the lineage of Caleb, because there's no further conversation about anything related to Caleb. You're kind of like, oh, he's a Calebite. Well, what does that mean? It's like the trail just goes cold. There's no additional.
So it's meant as like a slur.
Meant as a slur, yes. He was a Calebite, but like he's a
Oh,
Bradford.
one of those.
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah. Yeah, one of those guys. Okay. So it's important that you know that. I am not saying for certain that it should or shouldn't be capitalized. Don't hear me say that. But in my research, looking at that, when it says Calebite, like from the house of Caleb, you're like, oh man, what's going on with Caleb? And it's just like you take 2 steps and then the conversation stops. You're like, okay, this is not taking me anywhere. So that's why there is a not a consensus, but a large percentage of people that are Bible scholars that will actually say it actually shouldn't have been capitalized. It should have just been like he was a dog man, right? All right, verse 4. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. Now, I'm going to tell you what. I don't know what kind of cell phone system they had back then, 1,000 years before Jesus, but here's Nabal up here at Carmel, and where's David? The opposite end of the entire country, and he hears some dude is taking his sheep over here, okay? Do you understand the implications that, like, how does this communication happen? I'll tell you this. I don't think, because when you look at this, it says, what is he doing? What is Nabal doing? In verse 4.
Shearing sheep. Yeah.
Shearing sheep. That's your clue. Why is that your clue? You don't shear sheep year-round. You only shear sheep in the spring.
Okay.
Do you think David may have... What did David do when he was found by Samuel? What was he doing? Back in Bethlehem.
He was tending to a herd.
Tending to the herd. He was being a shepherd. Maybe shearing, but he was being a shepherd. So he knows the cycles. He knows the animals.
Being a shepherd only, is that seasonal or is that year-round?
It's year-round. But shearing, cutting the wool off.
He knows when the shearing should be taking place.
He knows when the shearing should be taking place. So those are your clues. Not that he has some sort of like direct, string with a can on the end over here and a string with a can on the end over here. He just knows the cycles and the seasons. Does that make sense? Yeah. He knows the cycles and the seasons. And the other thing is, love him or hate him, it's like, hey, Donald Trump's in town today. Right? He's not, but like news travels, right? So if this guy is as rich as we're thinking he is, 4,000 animals, and he's bought or rents out part of the mountain to feed his flock, David's not. That's a Trump. That's a whatever, a Bernie Madoff, or that's a who's the Berkshire Hathaway? Who's the Buffett? Warren Buffett, right? I mean, he's a big business guy in their country. So, I know what business he's in. I know his name. I know what time of year it is. I know where to find him. So it's not magic.
But how did he know he was going to? Hold on, I'm lost, I think.
Verse 4. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep.
Okay, but how does he know where he's... I was going to say where he's...
Do you know where Trump Tower is?
New York, right? Okay.
You knew that. Do you know when exactly he's there? No, but
Right.
you know where Trump Tower is.
Okay.
And I know that I know in shepherding, you're going to shear your sheep. So I know where Trump Tower is, and I know Trump's into sheep. I know where he's going to, when he's going to be at Trump Tower. Come springtime. So, right? So, verse 5. So David sent out 10 young men, and David said to the young men, go up to Carmel, literally all the way up across the country to Carmel, and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. In the name of David, I welcome you, or whatever, right? And thus you will say to him who lives in prosperity, remember, I'm using Trump here, but like him, hate him, the guy's got a lot of money, right? He lives in prosperity. We know he's got 4,000 sheep. He's got the land. He's got the stuff. He's got the name. Peace be to you and peace to your house and to all that you have peace. So he's like, I'm not here to take your animals, not here to take your land, not here to take your servants, not here to take your house. I am here coming to you in the name of peace. Now, why would David need to preface that?
Wants to be in good standing.
He wants to be in good standing. I'm going to remind us, David is not unknown. He's already known. Remember, Saul's killed his thousands and David his tens of thousands. So Nabal, just like we would say Trump on this side, it would be, General Norman Schwarzkopf over here, right? We know the name, right? And I know what he's done. So if I have a group of people approaching me and say, hey, we come in the name of David, it's like, whoa, I know what this guy's done before. So they know I'm in peace for you, your family, your house, your goods, your whatever. I'm not here for that situation. Does that make sense? So he's saying, chill. Here to talk, man. Here to talk. Okay? So he says, peace be to you, and peace to your house, and to all that you have. All your stuff, peace. Verse 7. I have heard that you have shearers. So I know what time of the year it is. Now your shepherds were with us. Now, if you'll remember, where's Bethlehem? Here?
Between Judah and the mountain, right?
Right, here. Bethlehem's there. And this land here is what we call the Negev, or the desert. And then there's some little pockets. This is the Paran, and this is the Beersheba is over here. There's some little pockets that are kind of, but to you and me and our naked eye, our untrained eye, it's desert. It's rocks and dirt, okay? But for them, it's like this distinct area. It's kind of like when the difference between looking at the cactuses, the cacti, in like Saguaro National Park with the tall ones that we all think of cactus. That's not the same kind of desert, but it is a desert as well as what you'd see in like Moab, Utah, right? It's different terrain, different vegetation, but it's like, yeah, it's desert, but that's what's kind of going on here. There's like desert, it's desert is dry, whatever, but they have kind of different character, different personality between these different things. And again, this is the line where Egypt kind of starts at that dry riverbed there. So he's saying, your shepherds were with us. And so what we see is that even though he's got animals up here and he's bringing those to the shearers, he's got apparently some of his workers have some of the inventory down here. Now, I will also remind you, why would I take animals into the desert? The only reason I would take animals into the desert is if there's something for them to eat. When does vegetation grow in the desert?
At night.
Typically in the springtime or summertime when you get those rains that come through. And what time is the shearing?
Spring.
In the spring. So you see how we're piecing this together? It doesn't say that exactly in the text, but we can break that down as we slowly look at what the black and white is here. Okay, we can look at the culture, the geography, all that stuff on the backside. So apparently he's got some of his crew down here during the spring rains. Maybe he's got the goats, because you don't really shear goats. So maybe he's got the goats down here. Hey, go feed them down there. I'm going to take care of shearing up here. All right? You tracking with me? So here we are in verse 7. I have heard that you have shearers. Now your shepherds were with us. So I think he's acknowledging, hey, I know that your 3,000 sheep were up there getting clipped. Okay? But you had some people down here. So now your shepherds were with us. We did not harm them, nor did they miss anything all the days that they were in Carmel. So just because they weren't up here doesn't mean that they missed anything. We took care of them.
That's how they're hearing about things. It's just people are going back and forth.
And that's how we see the game of telephone now, is his messengers are going back and forth, right? So you didn't see that up here, but now that makes sense when you look here. So we did not harm them or anything. Ask your young men, and they will tell you that we were good to them. We let them hang out. We let them feed with our animals, whatever. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we have come on a good day. Please give whatever you find at hand to your servants and to your son David. So he's asking for kind of a handout. Because if you remember, David's on the run. He's been on the run for a while now. Remember, he was going in the desert, and he was in the caves, and he was over here, and he's over here. He's running around. And now he went to the funeral of Samuel, kind of the guy that was on his side, and he runs away and he's hiding out here with his crew down here. And so he's saying, listen, I know you've got the means. You've got the resources. You got the money. You can afford it. There's 600 of my guys and me. Can you spare us some spare change? Can you send me a loaf of bread? Give me a coupon to a Subway or something? Like, help me figure out how I'm going to feed these guys down here. I'm asking for your help. I come in peace. I'm not here to wage war on you. I protected your guys down here. You know, from what, or we didn't. It didn't even say protect. Yeah, can we get some food, man? Can we get some grub? So we're in verse 8, verse 9. When David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal according to all these words and the name of David, and then they waited. I don't know if that was a day, an hour, a week. I don't know. It didn't say. They said, here's what's going on. And then they waited. It's like, I can see them going like, yeah, well, your guys were awesome. We loved, we hung out with them and we protected y'all stuff and we shared and this, that, and the other. And so David's hoping you can send something. Like, just waiting. What are we going to do? Right? And so we see here in verse 10, Nabal answered David's servants and said, who's David? And who is the son of Jesse? Well, what's he really asking? Saul has killed his thousands, and David's killed his tens of thousands. Do you think he doesn't know who David is?
Yeah, he should.
He does know who David is, I think.
Well, he said, who is the son of Jesse?
Yeah, who's the son? Yeah, how would he even know who his father was?
Who's the son of Jesse?
Yeah. I think more of it's like, who's David? Who's this? Yeah.
David who? Whatever.
Yeah. Like, I'm Trump. I don't need, Brad. What's he gonna do? Like, I literally have the best sheep and the best is the, terrible Trump impression, but you get it, right? Love him, hate him. He gives some great comedy too, right? So I think here he's really kind of thumbing his nose, kind of, David, man, I don't know about this guy, right? So I think he's really kind of trying to minimize, especially David sending him saying, I'm coming in peace. He's like, well, he's not coming to war. I don't care about that, dude. I got my own stuff going on. I got my own business to run here. Today, many servants are breaking away each one from his master. So what he's saying is, I see people breaking away from their masters to follow a different master. And so is this a ploy by David to get my people to go and follow him? Since David's killed his tens of thousands and he's influential in the land, is this maybe him going to try to he's going to hurt my business? Right? And should I then take my bread and my water and my meat, that which I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men whose origins are unknown? Because who was meeting up and following with David when he first hid in the caves in the hills? Do you remember that? Let's go back and look here. Huh?
What was his name? Oh, Jonathan.
No. Jonathan wasn't there. Hold on. David, in chapter 22, David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and his father's house heard it, they went down from there. Verse 2 of chapter 22. There gathered to him everyone that was in distress, and everyone in debt, and everyone that was discontented. What does that sound like to you? It sounds like a servant class to me. So those are the people who are making the 600. So when you see this guy, Nabal, I'm a businessman, I'm going to have people working for me, and I'm not going to pay them very much. I'm going to become rich off of their labor. And so you see here, Nabal is like, this is what he's thinking is happening, is that these people is he here to swipe away my servants, my workers, right? And so should I then take my provisions from my workers that I do have that are working for me and give them to some others that are randos, that are random people that are coming to David's side, joining his army. Like it's not like they have like great lineages. Like David, he was a shepherd. Like who cares? It's not like he was a king or he was a something. So this is the people that are following him. There's just a bunch of randos, right? So their origins are unknown. Verse 12, David's young men turned themselves around and went back. So they said, okay, I guess that's answer enough for me. Back down to Paran.
We think about the distance, let's say 75 miles or whatever,
right.
But these dudes aren't stopping.
No.
They'll probably walk that in a day and a half.
Yeah. I mean, 2 days they're done. So, yeah. But, I mean, still, they got to take 2 days of their lives to get there, So, so they turned around and they went back. And they came and reported to David all these words. And David said to his men, you want to front me like that, sucker? All right. Each man strap on a sword. Here we go. Yep. Right? Get their holster. Get you an extra couple of mags.
400 men.
Yeah. And so 400 men went up after David, but 200 stayed with the baggage. 200 guys stayed behind with all the stuff down here in Paran. 400 said, let's roll. Let's do this thing. Verse 14. Now, one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, listen, David sent messengers out of the wilderness there to go bless our master, to bless Nabal, and ask for something here. And Nabal railed against them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not harmed, nor did we miss anything. We didn't miss any action or food or anything from where we were. All the days that we went about with them in the field in Paran. They were a wall to us both day and night, all the days we were there with them keeping the flocks, which means they were protecting us as well. Now, therefore, know and consider what you will do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his household. He is such a worthless man that one cannot speak to him. So even the servant is coming to the wife saying, your husband is a jackhead. That dude. And he's just such a worthless man that people can't even talk to him. Can't even have a word with him. So verse 18, Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves. That's of bread.
I don't know how long it took her to cook that.
Probably not a short amount of time. 2 bottles of wine. That seems a little light to me. 200 loaves of bread, and everyone's getting one little sip.
What is that? 2 bottles of wine. What?
Yeah.
Nabal is sending 400 men after David.
No, David is sending 400 men after Nabal because he feels totally disrespected.
But one of Nabal's own, who was down in Paran, who had been taken care of by David's men, is telling Nabal's wife,
hey, they're coming.
There, and they're coming now. He was so horrible to them, they're going to come.
Yeah.
And 2 bottles of wine.
And only 2 bottles of wine. I mean, Abigail may be in trouble now, right? I mean, so 200 loaves of bread, 2 bottles of wine, 5 prepared sheep, 5 measures of roasted grain. A measured is about 60 pounds. So 300 pounds of roasted grain. So, I mean, imagine the thing you can imagine is like 300 pounds of like roasted peanuts or like something that the guys can just, eat on. So,
right.
I mean,
so she had like a big cart or 2 full of stuff.
Yeah. 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs. And she loaded them on donkeys, and she said to her servants, go on before me. See, I will be coming after you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. Now, I will tell you, remember, you go back in chapter 25, verse 6. What does it say in verse 6 about Nabal? Chapter 25, verse 6. How does it describe Nabal here?
Long after you, that you will stay with him and live in prosperity.
Prosperity. See that? Not just subsistence, but live in prosperity. What does yours say, Elton? What does yours say?
Verse 6.
Yep.
And thus you shall greet him. Peace be to you. Peace be to your house. And peace be to all that you have.
What does it say before that?
Verse 5. So David sent 10 young men. And David said to the young men, go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name.
What does it say at the end of 6 on yours?
And peace be to all that you have.
So you're missing that. What version are you reading out of?
ESV.
ESV? No.
Really?
ESV is wrong. No, I'm just kidding. There are some little nuances like that, right? This is one of the reasons why I like the modern English version, because it takes early manuscripts and adds them in there. And when you read it on the app, it'll actually give you a little deal where you can press the button and it'll go. Zoop. Early manuscripts sometimes have this. Early manuscripts some don't have this or whatever. So in mine it says that and thus you will say to him who lives in prosperity, peace be to you, peace be to your house, whatever. So he's acknowledging that this dude's rich. He lives in great prosperity. And so when you see that, remember that, but she did not tell her husband Nabal. She has all this stuff. She's got a bunch of donkeys. He won't even notice it. Yeah. That's the kind of, again, that's why I'm saying Trump. I don't know, whatever. Like, probably rich guy, super rich guy. He's not going to notice 2 wine. Maybe she only took 2 wine bottles because maybe
wine skins. I mean, skins could be.
It's true, but maybe he kept a close watch on the wine. So maybe she was like, I'm just going to take 2.
No, he was a drunk. Mom and Dad, you can't want to do. Mom and Dad will find out.
I don't know. That's not in the text. So that's just me joking.
I was going to say water. So I think it's enough to be supplemented with water.
Well, and so they're going to drink water out of the streams there. So the wine was really just for them to have that. And they would probably, in this case, since it's so little, they probably were using the bread to dip into the wine. All right, so verse 20 here. And as she was riding on the donkey and going down into the cover of the mountain, David, and into the cover of the mountain is a poetic way to say coming down and underneath the shadow of the mountain. And so that gives you a little hint. How does a shadow of a mountain form? The sun. So if the sun's right above, what's going to happen to the shadow? It won't be there if it's right above it. So the shadow has to be when the sun's at the low end of the horizon, one side or the other. If the sun's coming up from the east over here, where's the shadow going to be?
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise. Where's the shadow going to be?
On the west side.
And where's on the west side here? What's on the west side of the mountain? The ocean. So we're likely talking instead that she came down from the mountain during sunset on that particular day because it was in the shadow of the mountain.
Nice.
See? All of that from a simple phrase that she was riding the donkey coming down in the cover of the mountain. Isn't that cool?
Tells you the time of day.
Tells you the time of day and everything. When we understand the text and we break it down and slow down and have an understanding, it makes it's 3-dimensional. You can see that now. You can see the sun setting and the mountain and then the shadow, and you see her riding her donkey coming. You can see it. You can picture it, right? So David and his men were coming down to meet her, and she met them. And now David had said, surely in vain I have guarded all that this man has in the wilderness, down here in Paran, right? I guarded all that for him, but surely that was in vain. So that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him. So that I made sure that he didn't lose a sheep or a goat or a person or any of their equipment and tools. And he has returned me evil for the good that I've done. So may God do unto the enemies of David, and more also, if by morning I leave even one male of all who belong to him. Now, this is Brad's commentary, but I'm going to say, I kind of feel like perhaps David's overreacting a little bit here. Yeah. I could see him saying, seriously, dude, you wouldn't even miss enough to feed me and my 600 guys. Just send the food down here. Let's do this deal. I'll even pay you back later or whatever, right? David, I'm going to be king, so whatever. I'll make it happen, okay? But instead, he gets a little bit antsy. He gets a little bit prideful. He gets a little bit arrogant. And so what's he do? He's like, well, screw you then. Guys, mount up. Let's go. Get your stuff. He's seeking vengeance. He's seeking retribution. He's seeking to exact his own justice. Now this begins to, for me, gives me a little hint, a little glimpse into the heart of David a little bit, because up until this point, Mike, who's David been fighting for?
God.
That's right. Immediate answer. He's been fighting for God. He's been on the right side.
Well, this is like the first smidgen you find, and then later on, with
That's right.
Bathsheba's husband, he sends him to the
That's
front
right.
lines and stuff. You start
Yes.
to see like his sins, how they start small,
That's right.
and they grow.
That's right. So this is the first of them that we see. And you may be, some people don't read that, but that's the way I read that. This is the first one where I see David kind of overreaching on this particular, yes. Abusing his power and his influence a little bit. And kind of thinking pretty high of himself. Well, don't you know who I am? I mean, I'm David. I've killed tens of thousands. Yeah. So I kind of feel like this is the first signs of a little bit of trouble in David's world, right? So verse 23 here. When Abigail saw David, she hurriedly got down from the donkey and fell before David upon her face, and she bowed herself to the ground. Remember, if you go back to the beginning of this chapter in verse 3, what does it say about her? She was a woman of good understanding. She's a smart lady. Okay? She's smart. So she bows down before him and fell on her face before David. And she fell at his feet and said, "Against me alone, my Lord, is the guilt. I will take it. I'll be the responsible party for what's happened here." Does she have anything to do with it? No. But she said, "I am the one who responds. Please let your handmaid speak in your ears and hear the words of your handmaid. I'm your servant. I'll serve you. Please hear what I'm saying. I'll be the one to take the guilty party. Please do not let my Lord set his heart against the worthless man, against Nabal," which, by the way, is my husband. So this is one of those situations where you have to ask the question, and I don't know the answer. I read a bunch of commentaries and stuff. I couldn't find an exact answer. They're like, well, was this one of those like arranged marriages where like this idiot gets arranged marriage to this beautiful, smart woman and just she kind of has to suffer through that? Maybe. But I think we also see, even in today's world, we see beautiful, smart women making terrible choices in the men.
Like my wife.
Especially like your wife.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm glad you have at least some self-realization,
I'm glad you understand what you're really.
At least he knows. At least he knows.
At least he knows.
At least he
I'm
knows.
thinking that the other possibility is she just married him because he was going to be rich or is rich.
Wouldn't that fall into the same deal of I'm marrying him for his money and not for him? Yeah. And that's possibly true. Those were the options in the commentaries that I read, with none of them being like, this is absolutely what we don't know. But apparently beautiful. I mean, she's a hottie and she's super smart. Bad choice of judgment when it comes to her men. Okay, so however that happened, it did happen. But we see her here. She's saying, no, it wasn't Nabal. It was me. It was my fault. Don't let my worthless man. Don't let against Nabal. Don't let your heart be against him. For as his name is, so is he. Oh, now this is one of those situations where I'm going to take a wild guess. Their marriage is not probably top notch.
They're not very intimate.
So that's what makes Brad's thought that she's probably in it for the money. Because she doesn't respect him. It doesn't appear that she loves him. And she doesn't want David to go in there and clean house. All the servants would be dead, and he would take all the stuff. She would be left poor and without. So for me, I kind of think she's probably in it for the money, for the lifestyle, not for her husband. And she literally throws him under the bus here. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a clue. For as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your handmaid, did not see the young men of my Lord whom you sent. I didn't see those 10 guys that came up here. If I would have said, I would have taken care of them, right? But David, who did he send the 10 guys to talk to? Nabal. Not to Abigail. So they did exactly what he asked them to do. But she's like, if you had just sent them to me. So this is almost a situation where you could, just like a glimmer of a glimpse, see perhaps that she's actually she's doing a good thing here to save her husband, but it's actually almost manipulative to save her own self and her own lifestyle here. So, well, if you had just come to me, I would have taken care of you, honey. I don't know, why did you go to that fool over there, So, verse 26, now, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from coming in bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now let your enemies and those seeking to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. Now let this blessing which your maidservant has brought to my Lord be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the transgression of your handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord, David, a sure house, because my Lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil will not be found in you all your days. Does she know that? She's really laying it on, right? She's really laying it on, and she's actually throwing God's name in the mix.
Does she follow God? Does she know God? The question I'm wondering.
So either she's a religious woman who also really is infatuated with wealth and prosperity, or perhaps she's manipulating David to save her own bacon. I don't know for certain either way. I'm not here to present that, and I would tell you if I did, but I don't know. I'm just reading the text here. So we go to verse 29. Even if a man rises to pursue you and to seek your life, the life of my Lord will be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God. So she's trying to say, oh, I know. So if somebody was to try to come and attack you, you're going to survive. You're going to be okay. And David in his mind is probably like, yeah, Saul's chasing me all over the place trying to kill me, right? We just talked about that. But the lives of your enemies he will sling out as from the hollow of a sling. It will be when the Lord does for my Lord, according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel. Now, this is where I start saying, okay, was she talking this God stuff as like manipulative, which is why I brought that up. But now you see, this is almost prophetic, because it's not widely known that David's already been anointed. So now we start thinking, uh-oh, who's talking here? Because it looks like she's trying to play him, but now perhaps she knows something. Okay. That you appointed, let's see here, I'm sorry. He will sling out from them as a hollow from a sling. Remember, Big Chris brought that slingshot, and we looked at that. It will be when the Lord does for my Lord, according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel, that this will be no grief to you, that this situation won't be something that bothers you. You won't even remember this. Not an offense of heart to my Lord, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that my Lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, remember then your handmaid. So I don't know for sure what she does or doesn't know.
In mine it says, and when the Lord your God has brought my Lord's success, remember your servant. And then I hear go back to the money thing. Like, hey, once you're successful, I'll be here. You can pay me back for everything I'm doing.
Right, exactly. So I don't know for sure what the deal is here. I know that David came in here hot-headed. And so we're going to see how he responds to her monologue, right?
And you said she's really pretty, right?
And she's really pretty.
Oh, hey.
So it's kind of like,
hey, he's got a thing for pretty women. Hey, married pretty women at that.
Well, not yet.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet. Yeah, think spoiler alert. Like we wouldn't have any clue about what's going to happen. I mean, we have no idea,
Yeah, I never read this book.
Verse 32. David, here's his response. David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to me." Uh-oh. Looks like he's drinking the Kool-Aid or the 2 things of wine. And blessed is your discretion, and blessed are you who have kept me this day from coming to shed blood and from avenging myself with my own hand. For as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, who has restrained me from injuring you, if you had not hurried to come and meet me, surely there would not have been left even one male to Nabal by the morning light. So David received from her hand what she had brought him on the donkeys, and said to her, Go up in peace to your house, and see, I have obeyed your voice and have granted your request. So, whew, he's not going to go in there and wipe a bunch of people out. Not going to have a bunch of bloodshed.
Just so I'm on the same page, she just brought him the food he needed. Good.
Yep.
Okay.
She brought him all the food he needed, and he says, Thanks.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that you just humbled yourself before me, you brought me some food. And as we know as guys, sometimes all you need is a sandwich, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need someone to bring me some snack. Bring me food.
Sandwich, snacks.
I'm angry. No, you're not angry. You're hungry, babe. Let me get you.
I just read ahead, and it's funny.
Yeah.
Cheese and chips.
Yeah. A ham and cheese, little mayo, a dash of mustard, here's some chips. Oh, yeah. Man, now we're talking. All right. So don't be reading ahead either, man. Come on. Yeah. So Abigail came to Nabal, and he was feasting in his house. So apparently he didn't miss any of the stuff that she had given away. He's feasting in his house like the feast of a king, right? So he's partying big time. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. There's all your wine.
That's not even the funny part.
There's all your wine. And therefore she told him nothing until the morning light. But in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, his wife told him these things. And his heart died within him, and he became as a stone.
He had a heart attack.
He had a heart attack.
She told him these things, and he just literally had a heart attack.
Literally had a heart attack, and he's a stone.
Wow.
Dead. Gone.
It failed him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died.
Yep. Yep. So, about 10 days after that, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. So he had a heart attack, became like a stone, which is basically he's just like comatose or something. And then 10 days later, he was gone.
Wow.
When David heard
Do you
that...
think he died out of fear, thinking that David might still come back, or just because he was a glutton?
I think he was a glutton. Because if you look at, he was partying like a king. Like he was...
And maybe he was getting so hot, like she was telling him, he was like...
Yeah, and got it worked up and...
Yeah, just killed him.
Heart attack. Okay. Now, when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed is the Lord who has defended the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal and has kept his servant from evil. He's like, God, you totally did this. I didn't have to do it. Like, I was going to go over there and totally cut that guy's head off, and you just gave him a heart attack and killed him. Thank you, man. How delightful, you know? How delightful. Thank you, Lord. Which... Have you ever done that? You ever had a situation where you're like, that person's driving like an idiot down the road, and, you know, I hope that, I need to calm down, Brad. And then they like get stuck behind 7 other people. You're like, you know, you're like, yes, you know. Not that you wish they would crash or anything like that. I mean, maybe.
Or when that person's zipping and they zip around you because they're mad you're going slow and you end up right next to them at the light.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, okay.
And so we're going to continue down here in the end of 39. It says, David sent and spoke with Abigail to take her as his wife. Now, I don't know how long it is between this thing.
I told you. I knew it. I knew it.
Well, as soon as he hears.
I knew it.
So he's like, oh, your husband's dead? Well, you were smart and you're pretty, so hey, why don't you come on over here? Now, keep in mind, hey, seriously, keep in mind, where's David hanging out right now? Paran. Is there a palace down here? Where are we?
Near the Red Sea.
Desert. Yeah. So this is not like she's moving on up. There's nothing here.
He's king.
Something called Burning Man.
So, yeah, he's going to be king, but he's not king yet.
I missed the timer. I missed the
He's not king yet. Saul is still the king. Well, actually, yeah, Saul is still the king. But she knows that he's going to be king, So he's like, hey, once you come and marry me, I'm going to take you to be my wife. But I could literally see David being like, and by the way, why don't I move in with you? Because you got this wonderful.
She could have also been hearing it from the servants, though.
Yeah.
That were going back and forth.
Right.
Young men, like, oh, this guy's going to be king. They've been seeing what's going on with him and Saul or whatever.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But I mean, if it was me and I was David and I was like, hey, I'm going to marry this hottie, I'm like, you kind of got the place. Why don't we just move up there? So when the servants, verse 40, when the servants of David came to Abigail at Carmel, remember up here, they spoke to her saying, David has sent us to you to take you as his wife. Now, scroll back with me to Exodus. Let's go back in time a little bit here. Go to Exodus chapter 19. Ooh, Exodus 19. I want to point out something to you here. Hold on. I'm going to find it. I didn't actually intend to. I'm just calling this out because. Hold on a second here. Let's see here. Exodus 19 is where it happens. That's not where it's talked about, though. It actually is discussed in Exodus. Let's see here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pull this out, but it just hit me. So I'm going to pull this out right here. Uh-oh. In chapter 3, let's see here. I can't find it right this moment. Again, I didn't plan on pulling it out, but basically, God, the promises of the Exodus, there's 4 promises of the Exodus, okay? The first promise of the Exodus is, I will set you free from your bondage. I'll set you free from being slaves. Number 2 was, I'm going to set you free from that slave mindset. You've been 400 years. You don't know any different than being a slave. You need to become your own people. So I'm going to break that mindset pattern in you. Number 3, I'm going to do mighty acts to free you. That's the plagues, right? Parting the Red Sea, having water come from rock. I'm going to do mighty acts, right? And number 4, the 4th promise of the Exodus, he literally uses the phrase, let's go back to 1 Samuel 25. Look at verse 40. It says, David has sent us to you to take you as his wife. And in the 4th promise, I can't remember where it is right this second, but he says, I'm going to take you as my people. It's the same phrasing. In the Hebrew, it's, will you marry me? In the same phrasing. I'm going to take you as my wife. I'm going to take you as my people. So I just made the...
It sounds different, though. He's not saying, will you? It's like, I'm taking you.
No, I'm going... And that's what it was, is God said, I'm taking you as my people. I choose you and I take you.
He's the king. You can do that.
Okay? So, anyway, I don't know where... It's in there somewhere. But we go through in Easter, Passover time, we go over the 4 promises and do all that stuff. Verse 41, so she arose and bowed herself on her face to the ground and said, here is your handmaid, a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. So she's saying, not only am I going to be a servant of you, but I will wash the servants' feet. Like she's basically saying, whatever that looks like, I want to be with you. So as cynical as I was about what she was saying here, I kind of think when you see this that she's actually being honest. And she's maybe revealing maybe a bit of prophecy. Abigail hurriedly arose and rode on a donkey with her 5 young women who attended her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. So where'd they go? She said she left. So she left here. She went and got married out here in the desert. They had a Vegas vacation, had a Vegas marriage, right? And David, verse 43, David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel. So both of them were his wives.
So took one of his other chick, the other chick she brought, and was like, "Ooh, you know what? I like her and her too."
Yeah.
She's all good.
He's not king yet.
My bad.
He's not king yet.
My bad.
And
Prepared.
by the way, the Jezreel Valley is in Jerusalem. It's the Mount of Olives, the Jezreel Valley. And I'm sorry, that's the Kidron Valley. The Jezreel Valley is up here. The Jezreel Valley is up here between Carmel and Jerusalem. And that is where we see the story of Ruth and Boaz happening. So that's where that's coming from. The Kidron Valley is in Jerusalem. But anyway, so between here coming down, either with her or on the way, says, oh, well, this Ahinoam of Jezreel, she's pretty too. Come on. Might as well. We already got the priest booked, so, I mean, let's go ahead and do this thing, you know. Yeah. Let's go ahead and make it happen. And so then in verse 44, I think if we see the person writing this message, adds almost like a footnote here. Look at verse 44. But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Paltiel, the son of Laish, who was from Gallim. Now, wait a minute.
Gave David's other wife away?
Wasn't David married to Saul's daughter, Michal? Yes. Yeah. And so in the midst of Saul chasing him, he apparently grabbed his daughter back and farmed her out to another dude. And David's marrying two other people. This is starting to feel a lot like The Young and the Restless.
He's getting ready to be king. He's warming up.
We're just warming up. As much as we are seeing that he's a man of God, he's following after God. I don't want to do the right. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I feel bad that I even cut the corner off the guy's robe while he was taking a dump. Right? We talked about that last week. I feel bad about that. I could have killed you, man, but I didn't. Can we just have this peace between us? Come on. All that's going on, and at the same time, we see David's got some wandering eyes. David has a hard time thinking with the correct body parts. So I feel like this is the beginning of, does that make sense what I'm saying? Even just how angry he got about the guy saying, no, I'm not going to give you any food. He could have just been like, seriously, dude, come on, man. You can afford it. You can spare it. It's no big deal, whatever. But instead, he was like, mount up. We're going to go kill that sucker, you know?
Do you think that he already knew about Abigail at that point? Or Alpha?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, maybe in that time they would not have like advertised, you know, Ivana Trump. It wouldn't have been, you know, she wouldn't have been widely known like that unless it was the queen or the princess of the land. So probably not well known, and that's why I think she introduces herself so much to him, and it's like, oh, I'm just here. Otherwise, she would have been like, you know who I am, you know, I'm Angelina Jolie. You know who I am, you know, or whatever. But she didn't do that because I don't think he recognized her. So that's my own 2 cents on that. So what's the application for a chapter like this? Well, the first thing would be, as great as we think we are and as good as we think we are doing in our lives to follow Christ, we're one temper tantrum away from ruining our testimony, at least not permanently for all people all times, but with maybe a group of people or a person. And perhaps we should be more content with what we have instead of seeking to be filled up all the time, whether that's in business, money, influence, power, prestige, the appearances of social media, all the different things. Maybe we're striving so hard to try to look like we've got it all together. When someone tells us that we don't, we freak out. And as we see here with David, this may lead to a longer, harder sanctification process with God.
Forever he was fighting just for God, and now he's kind of going on his own, testing the water, testing.
Yeah. But remember when he was attacking the Philistines before? What did he do?
Yeah.
He said, you know what, God? Should I go attack the Philistines? Yeah, go attack the Philistines. Okay, I'm going to go attack the Philistines, right?
Exactly.
Where in here do you see him reaching out for God? None. Now, what was the first verse of chapter 25? What was the very first verse? The first line.
Samuel died.
Now Samuel died. What does that tell you? The person who he was being discipled, his spiritual guide, his spiritual leader, was gone. And within the same chapter,
For new wives and this one, that one.
yeah. So that's the importance of having a brotherhood. That's the importance of having someone who is a spiritual leader, spiritual guide, who is got their face in the Bible, reading, who has life experience that you don't, that can pour into you, that can answer tough questions, can challenge you on hard things, can call you out on your temptations and your sins.
Amen.
Because if we're left to our own devices, in one chapter, we're already on a downward spiral.
Amen. There's three rungs. You got to have someone that's pouring into you, someone that you are on the same level as, that you can fellowship with, and then someone that you're pouring into.
That's right. That's right. So that's the application for us from 1 Samuel 25. And I've showed you guys this before. Maybe John, I don't know if I showed it to you, but the Barabbas and Jesus thing, you guys have seen that before. Yeah. And we were watching that before we came up here. And I mean, there's no power within you to defeat sin. There's no power to defeat temptation. If it had been, I would have done it already. But it's not within me.
Apart from me, you can do nothing.
Apart from me, you can do nothing. It is in the power and the name of Jesus. That's the answer of all of it. That's the answer. And we see here David, who has been the golden child, been God's anointed, chosen one, without his face pointed to God and his heart seeking to follow God, within a matter of paragraphs, beginning to unravel. So we'll be in 1 Samuel 26 next time. See you then.